Hello friends and welcome back to Player's Companion. I'm Hayley.
And I'm Dustin.
Today we have brought you maybe the opposite of what we normally bring you, and we're going to discuss our worst or least favorite, if you want to be so harsh, board games on our shelves.
I mean, they aren't necessarily bad games. For everyone who sees one of them is like, hey,
yeah,
I like that game. Not to, go against your taste. That's fine. It's subjective. But they just don't hit the table for one reason or another. And we'll go over why we don't like to play them very much. First up is one that it was more my pick, but I think we both kind of agree. The game is Call to Adventure. This standalone expansion is the Stormlight Archive, based on the books by Brandon Sanderson, which I am pretty unfamiliar with. Gotten a little bit through just cultural osmosis, but I've never read them or anything myself. So this is not a slight against the book series or anything. I don't know. The problem is that this game, I think, kind of sucks if you don't know anything about the books. So, For one thing, Call to Adventure is already a super light game mechanically anyway.
I don't think it's a bad game. It's especially good for like beginner gamers if you want to introduce someone to something. But if you're not that and you haven't read Stormlight Archive, there's really nothing for you. And I've read the book, or I've read at least Way of Kings, so that's why I was excited to get it. But I didn't really even like just the base game itself.
Yeah. Well, the base game is fine. It's interesting in that you have like this rune system for your randomization instead of dice. Use that to power up your actions and everything. The RNG is a little different. It fuels your other choices and everything. The game is more of like a narrative experience where you're like having cards lead to other cards.
You're just telling a story.
Yeah, craft a story by the end of it.
And you would think as two people who like writing that we would have been like really into this game.
I found myself really probably acting more into it than I actually was. But then take on top of that already like mechanically very light game where it's all about storytelling. And now you're trying to tell a story where if you haven't read the books, I don't know any of the characters. I don't know what the terms mean. Like every game that's licensed, it should still be at least like able for people who aren't familiar to enter into it and still enjoy. I don't think you need to like have ever watched a Star Wars film to enjoy like Star Wars Outer Rim. You can still just explore and shoot things.
Yeah, you're just playing a bounty hunter.
Yeah. And in this, it's like, tell a story, but you don't know anything about it. It was kind of dull. This one, unfortunately, just not that fun. Goodbye.
Next one is one on my list. I'm not a fan of this game at all. This is Vampire the Masquerade Rivals. I was very excited about it because Dustin's really talked up the Vampire RPG. So I was like, well, at least this is a way to experience it and kind of see how all the different clans interact and stuff. You don't get that from this game. There's so much going on.
There's a lot going on.
And then at the same time, a lot of it's really repetitive. Like when you have to fight the people in the sewer, it's like always the sads or whatever. It's like always you're just fighting those guys. They're always there, and it's the only thing you're fighting. It's just a terrible mechanic. I don't understand what's going on in this game. On top of that, I'm not very good at competitive card games anyway, but then make it even more complicated than the ones that already exist. This game makes me mad.
This is one that I backed through a Kickstarter or GameFound, one of those campaigns, and was very excited for it. At least I like the world of Vampire. I love the lore of it. I like card games. I used to play the old original one that Wizards of the Coast put out. But anyway, yeah, it's a game that works better on paper than in practice. The two big weaknesses, I think, are one, as Hayley said, there's a lot of things going on. There are so many card subtypes.
It took like an hour and a half just to have the rules explained.
And most card games, let's say Magic the Gathering, the classic, you've got creatures, you have enchantments, and you have lands and sorceries / instant, your spell cards, And you can have subsets and different types within those. Like creatures will have a different type, so you can match like all the slivers together, and different sorceries might have like flashback or some other kind of linked thing to them. But they still have a very base mechanic. Rivals, for every faction, it seems like they introduced one or two other card types. So you would have a deck, one deck with your vampires in it, You have another deck with all the city characters in it, which also has events, and then your other deck, which has your disciplines, your retainers, plots, and schemes, and items, and defensive cards, which are not your attack cards, so make sure you have the right balance of attack or defense cards in it. Later decks also added in like Diablerie and animals, and so basically like just with all the clans they tried to do everything rather than make them all be like subsets of event cards. Everything got its own card type, and it just really piles up. And the other thing that is good on paper is that it's meant to be played for 4 players. So the idea is that everyone has a specific political rival. You can win both by just gaining the most power in the city, maybe becoming the prince or what have you, or by getting rid of your rival. The issue is that if not everyone is a balanced player or on the same page, one player is immediately given an immense advantage. So when Hayley and I were playing, myself and 2 of the other players had all been Kickstarter backers and were all very up on the rules and everything. Hayley has never played and didn't know the rules, was still trying to grasp what all the card text did. Your rival just got to play super aggressive and was just like hammering on you and not giving a damn what any of the other players were doing, because he knew that you weren't as familiar with the timing and the flow of your defenses and everything. And as soon as you were down, that was it, and the rest of us had no chance to win. It was just so the game can be really swingy and really one-sided, and though it's supposed to be balanced between 4 players and you can defend each other, it ultimately doesn't really work out that way a lot of times. There's a lot going on, and unfortunately it makes for a very much more of a clunky game. This one's only for like vampire super fans. Unfortunately, I got 1 expansion in and I realized we were never going to let it hit the table again.
This is, if you're wondering, this is my least favorite game on the list. It's this one. This one makes me very sad to have it on the list, but it is also the reason we have this list.
That's true.
And it is the Lord of the Rings dice building game. So
hold on, before you get too into it, let me get all the dust off the front of the cover here, because it's got
we played a lot. So it's similar if you've ever played the game Quarriors. Same kind of dice building mechanic, except Quarriors is good.
Quarriors, Dice
Quarriors
Masters
is playable. The concept is really good. The idea of it is really fun. I think there's even a good game in here.
Yeah,
the main problem is that the rule book is impossible to read. Dustin, you were teaching it, right?
Right. So I was, and still am whenever they come through the area, a product rep for WizKids. And so I had the designers at WizKids teach me this game, and it was lots of fun. And we had lots of fun showing it to people. Of course, the weekend, but this is a great game. Love Lord of the Rings. Love Quarriors and Dice Masters. This should fit perfectly into our collection. Unfortunately, then like 3 or 4 months later, when the retail version of the game came out and we purchased it, sat down at the table, realized we didn't remember exactly how to play, and the rule book is so bad. And we tried to learn again off the rule book and could not really figure it out, and could not figure out why it was so much fun when we played it at Gamma and why it was so bad now that we were playing it here.
Yeah, I remember sitting at that restaurant the first time we cracked it open at like 2 a.m. and we were like, how do you play this? But this is a game that will never leave our game shelf, no matter how much we dislike it, because it was the first gift you ever got me.
Cast it into the fire! Destroy it! No.
At least I didn't break up with you.
Yeah, well, you could have, and I would have been totally understanding. This is a game that's notorious for how badly written the rulebook is. If you go on to like Board Game Geek, you'll find thread after thread complaining where people are trying to understand how certain interactions work, how timing and the turns work, and they just can't quite get it. And whatever people do cobble together to play from their misunderstanding is still just not a fun experience. Now, I think I've heard WizKids has put out like a PDF maybe of a better rendition of the rules that maybe explain things better, so there might be a chance that you could find this at a thrift store and have a good time with it with that version of the rules, but buyer beware. It's also just been outclassed by so many other dice building games at this point.
Well, I still love it because you got it from me.
Next
The
up on
sigh
list,
says everything.
and this is going to be a controversial one, okay? Because Ankh, I think, is a good game.
Yes, if you're the only person who is capable of winning the game, I'm sure it's a great game.
Well, let's start from the beginning. Okay, so first off, I kickstarted this game as well.
Mm-hmm.
It is a Egyptian-themed area control game.
Made from the same people as Rising Sun, which is an incredible game.
Yeah, it's part of the trilogy. Blood Rage, amazing game. Rising Sun, amazing game. Ankh, good game.
No.
So you have area control. You have wonderfully sculpted pieces representing the Egyptian gods and their various followers. You fight for control and build up faith and get more powers in the game through faith and cast plagues on the land, and basically just trying to control Egypt at the end of the game. And there's different scenarios that change the way you play. But there's one big thing that happens in the game, and it's why no one will play this game with me. Gonna break that down.
The people in the bottom two spaces have to combine into one weird god, but your victory points become the victory points of whoever was at the very end. Like, you're supposed to get a couple boosts from it, but it doesn't end up balancing out. And so then you have to play catch up to try to catch up with the person who's in the lead. And Dustin tried to make it sound like you have all these advantages that the other person doesn't, so you're going to catch up. No, you never catch up. You never catch up.
Well, okay, so I think it sounds like it's balanced because,
but it's not, because you've always won.
Because you get both the powers of both of the respective gods, and here's our
best.
All right, yep. Get the powers of both the gods. You get a combined action total kind of deal and everything. And every game we played, the person or people who were in last at the bottom of the pile before now got up to where they were able to close the gap and almost won. So that was a pretty close game.
Notice that you said almost.
Yeah, despite that, no one has ever managed to beat me at this game combined, and so now everyone refuses to play it.
Another thing that I don't like, though, is it really depends on who you're playing with as well, because like the first time we played with your friend who I don't know as well, so we didn't really like talk about a strategy. We weren't like trying to play like together or really work cooperatively. We're just kind of like, what do you want to do? Because we know we're going to have to combine, whatever.
Right, and that is a part of the issue with it that I can definitely agree with, is that when you're playing in that manner and the characters are combined at the bottom of the rung, there's nothing that actually divides the labor between the two players. One player usually ends up kind of being the dominant one because there's still only one decision set. One person just basically loses all of their pieces, and the other player gains the powers that other player had onto their piece. So it really does it'll just eliminate one player from the game and make a second player a bit stronger.
The second time I played it, I played with a closer friend, so I guess it was a little bit more enjoyable, but it's still like we knew we were gonna lose.
Well, that's just stinking thinking right there. That's why you lost. This game teaches you have to have faith.
It's a stinking game. That's what it is.
Unfortunately, this one will probably end up on the chopping block as well. I love it. I love the pieces. I love the themes.
Yeah, I was really excited about it. I really thought it was going to be great. And I was even interested in the lowest players combining because it's an interesting idea and I can respect them for coming up with something unique that we haven't seen before, but it didn't work. It's not a balanced game.
I've been so disappointed by that I had never even got the last expansion with the other gods. We don't actually have Bast or Horus. You know, they're really cool pieces because I just knew it was going to be a waste of $50.
No, it's not It's not always great to always be the winner, huh? And now you don't get to play the game that you like.
It's still great to be the winner.
This is the last game, bitch. The last game on this list is iconic in our house.
This is the best game on
This
this
is
list.
the best of the worst. It is A Nightmare on Elm Street, the Freddy game. Because, have you ever watched Nightmare on Elm Street and thought, Freddy sure likes to make a lot of sentences. And he likes words, random words that have nothing to do with the movies.
Hey, he is absolutely a wordsmith, all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, who else would have said, welcome to prime time, bitch? Like,
But primetime is not a word in this game.
might be. I
I
don't
don't
know.
think it is.
If I went up to you in a board game store and I didn't let you look at the game, and I said to you what game lists its description on the back as a whimsical game of imagination, chance, and creative storytelling for 3 or more players, would you have guessed A Nightmare on Elm Street, the Freddy game? I originally had this game. Oh man, this came out right after Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, as I recall, when Freddy was like at his peak of merchandising. And I found this in a store and picked it up, and it is not good, but I really enjoyed the gimmick of the board and everything. The board is 3-dimensional. It's actually interesting because it's a precursor to like hidden trader games, like One Night in Werewolf or Werewolf and whatever, because one of the players is Freddy Krueger from the beginning, and you're not supposed to let anybody know who Freddy is until you switch your pogs out into him, and then you start stabbing people and trying to eliminate the players from the game and hope that they didn't get the weapons that stop you, or maybe convince them to trade the weapons to you, and then you're just running around slaughtering them or what have you. Probably not an appropriate game for a 10-year-old subject matter wise.
8-year-old. It's ages 8 and up.
Anyway, Hayley, you mentioned words. What do words have to do with this game? And
I don't remember why you have to make sentences, but you have to make sentences. And there's no rules to the sentences, so you just have to make a sentence with a word in it.
Yeah.
But why do you get the word
Well,
cards?
so you have 2 decks of cards that you're always drawing from, a black deck and a white deck. And between the two, I don't even know what the function of having 2 decks is, honestly, but the 2 of them have different power-ups or different weapons and things in them, but also will have different like nouns and adjectives spread throughout them. And you're trying to get a bunch of cards together with these random words, because occasionally you'll land on a space where in order to continue, or to not lose a turn, or maybe to like dodge Freddy if he's coming after you, whatever, you have to tell a spooky story using the words on the cards. So you get, based on, one of the most violent movie killers of all time, he'll be telling stories like, once I was in a spooky, slimy dungeon. Little words that 8-year-olds could read and build a terrifying story around. But, that said,
Bet you didn't know this game existed.
this is still in our collection because it's fun as hell.
And educational.
Yeah, it's stupid, I'll grant you, but it has a cool 3D board of Freddy's house that you wander in and out of. It has such great characters as Coach, Grandpa, and Nice Guy. And while the game mechanic is just dumb, I mean, there's nothing better for a bunch of 30-plus-year-old players to get around and play on a just ridiculous Halloween night. I mean,
I will say, the last time we played it, everybody did have a really good time.
I tell you, it's fun.
I was the only person who didn't like it.
It's not good. It's not a good game. I agree, it goes on the worst games list, but it's fun, and I'll never make the mistake of selling it again.
So that's going to do it for our worst/least favorite games. We've already thought of a few more, so if you guys enjoy this video, we might do a part 2. Let us know if you'd like to see that. Also, please let us know what the worst games on your shelves are. I hope you have some fun ones like the Freddy game as well. And if you made it this far, leave the trash emoji down below so that we know that you made it.
That said, thanks for joining us, guys, and until next time, keep gaming.
I think